It's story time. Chapter 2. Our Companions.
Okay, well, hello listeners, my name is Em, also known online as Emzotic. I am an exotic animal specialist. I'm also a former zookeeper, and essentially I share content all about how to care for exotic pets, and overall I'm just obsessed with organisms. I was born in London. I was there for a couple of years as a child, which is great because England has some amazing tales of hauntings. And then when I was 7, I moved to Hong Kong. So I've been all over really. And now I am in America, in the middle of Colorado, in beautiful Denver. And it's just a good time all around. I have a really interesting and conflicted relationship with the paranormal because on the one hand, I have the brain of a scientist. I like to trust in what I can see, what is tangible, but at the same time, I have certainly experienced things that I cannot explain and things which to this day baffle me and which I've been so conflicted about ever talking about because I don't want to be viewed as some kind of a kook, but at the end of the day, I can't argue what I've experienced, and I just have come to realize it's foolish to think that we have the answers to everything. So back of my mind, I just think there has to be a logical explanation, even though based on what I've experienced, there isn't. So the first paranormal experience that I can remember was being with my mum in our first home, and I was very young. I was probably about 3 or 4, so just starting to make memories. And my sister, who is 2 years older, was also in this beautiful master bedroom. It's a gorgeous Victorian house with beautiful big windows and a ton of history, and my mum was upstairs in this master bedroom with us, and I think we were just hanging out. She was folding clothes, and my sister, who is a total chicken when it comes to the paranormal, pointed into the corner and said, "Lady." And my mum just froze. I mean, my mum is strict Catholic. She does not believe in the paranormal. And to her, anything of the sort is just bad news. And she's like, "Oh, Christina, are you seeing something?" And my sister Christina goes, "Yes, mummy, lady." And my mum was like, "All right, well, say goodbye to the nice lady." And upon asking my sister at a later time to describe this lady, it turns out that she was describing the old lady who used to live in our home, who was a Jewish wedding dress designer, and she described her to a T, which is really quite incredible. So that was probably one of my first experiences of something paranormal happening in my earlier life. I had one particularly nice experience a few years ago when my absolutely beloved pet ferret, Bear, passed away. And for a ferret, we were so close. I mean, he was just like a loyal little dog, and he wasn't just a pet, he was also my colleague. He would come with me every day for years and travel all around the UK as an animal ambassador. I used to work as an animal educator, taking various animals into schools and universities, even prisons sometimes, to give educational talks on adaptation and evolution. And Bear was one of my hands-on creatures. He was so wonderful and gentle, and he won so many people's hearts over. And when he passed away due to old age, I had to really come to terms with that. He was my only real companion at home. I wasn't living with anyone. I had no companion animals. I had a lot of exotics, but the connection I have with exotics is very different to domestic creatures. And when I had to have him put to sleep, it was such a heavy burden on my heart. And I remember for weeks I would continually smell him. And if you've ever smelled a ferret, they smell fragrant. And the smell doesn't attach to just random objects, it's attached to the ferret. And every night I would wake up because it was almost like I could just smell a ferret under my nose. It was so peculiar, and every ferret smells slightly different, and it was 100% bear scent. And more than that, I would hear the tapping of his long nails on the wooden corridor that I had outside my bedroom. And more than once I would kind of creep to my door and listen, and I could almost feel the vibrations of him walking up and down my corridor. And when I would open the door, there would be nothing there at all. And I lived in an apartment complex with a bunch of really old folk who never made any noise. So I knew that it was some kind of message that perhaps Bear was still with me. And peculiarly, the only time it stopped, and it stopped very suddenly, was when I received his ashes back from the crematorium. And it was almost like that was it, he was home again. And I keep his ashes with me everywhere I go. I travel with them. It brings me a lot of comfort. And one day I will scatter those ashes, but it was certainly peculiar to me to know that as soon as his ashes were brought home again, the signs that he was still around kind of stopped. And it's almost like he didn't have to give me that little nod anymore. And that was a real comfort at that time in my life. I certainly believe that animals do have spirits. I do believe that they are far more sentient than people realize. They're a lot more intelligent than people realize. And it's only now that we have started to work with animals more and more that we've started to question, do they have a soul? Do they have an afterlife? And the more we delve into how animals communicate with one another, the more we realize that there's so much we don't know. And I think it's almost a little bit impertinent of us as humans to believe that somehow another living being's soul is lesser than our own. And it only makes sense that if we live and breathe and can experience the paranormal, that another living being, such as a dog or a cat, could experience that too. Whether an animal has an afterlife, I don't know, but I certainly do believe that I have experienced through my pet ferret Bear's passing that they have the ability to exist in a kind of afterlife. So I would say yes. I also have one other story about the paranormal and how that has affected me, and it's a lot more recent. This happened about 1.5 years ago now, and it's not something that I ever thought that I would talk about, but the more the time passes, the more I come to terms with it and make my peace with it, the more I'm able to talk about it and not feel like I'm a complete loon. And it was honestly terrifying. So please forgive me if I happen to stumble on my words every now and then. It's just I've blocked out a lot of this. So here we go. Let's just jump on into it. A few years ago, I was renting a property in Morris County in New Jersey, and my former partner was going through a really tough time. He had pretty bad blood with someone, which, knowing my ex, is not that surprising in hindsight. But I really do feel that the person that he had crossed sent something bad to our house. I remember distinctly never feeling uneasy in this house. I always felt so calm and so peaceful, and it's almost as though overnight just this heavy veil of anger, not even just sadness, but anger just descended on this house to the point where I felt truly watched, threatened. I would hear things happening in the house down in the basement, which were not sounds I would normally hear from this house. And I'd lived there for a while. I knew the quirks of the house. This was not normal. It wasn't machinery. It wasn't just the contracting and expanding of the walls. It was something nasty. It was almost like something was following me in the house. Things would break, things would set on fire, and it was terrifying. One particular evening when I was feeling brave, I thought to myself, I've done a bit of research on how to get rid of nasty entities. I can feel it in the bedroom. I'm just gonna go in there and ask it to leave, because up until this point I just ignored it. I read everywhere that if there's something you don't want in your house, ignore it, ask it to leave, and smudge the property, sage it. So I'd been trying to do all of these apart from asking it to leave. And I opened up the bedroom. It was the evening, and even though the sun wasn't completely set yet, when I opened the bedroom door, everything inside this room made my hair stand on end. It was pitch black, and it shouldn't have been at this time. And I remember I stupidly closed the door behind me, and I just couldn't see anything. It was almost like someone had put a bag over my head, and I didn't know left from right or up from down. And I remember my voice trembling, but saying, only love can enter here, only kindness can enter here, all other things must leave. And it didn't. And I just remember reaching behind me and fumbling for the door lock and just exiting. I was like, I can't. So I rushed out onto the lawn and took off my shoes and tried to ground myself. And I was like, wow, I have never experienced feeling that unwelcome in my life. And I sat on the lawn, and I got in touch with a friend of mine who is very spiritual. I suppose one would call her a practicing witch. And I just said to her, listen, I really need some help here. I'm this close to trying to hire a priest to come in and exorcising this house. And she really tried to put me at rest. She understands these sorts of things far better than I ever will, and has a ton more capability than I do when it comes to trying to bring everything back into balance. So she did what she could from far away, and she talked me through bringing certain things into the house, ridding certain things from the house as well, and certain rituals. And over time, things did get better. And I do remember the final straw was when I once again felt very close behind me when I was sleeping, almost like something, if I were to have turned my head, I feel like I would have seen something's head right behind mine. When you can just feel something is hovering right behind you. I could feel that. And I was so angry because things had been so balanced for a couple of weeks that I used every ounce of my willpower, and I was like, you have to go back to your source right now. And I actually kind of regret using that terminology, because I found out that same time that I did that, the person who I believe had originally sent all this negativity to us got in a car accident. And after that, they lived, but after that, nothing else happened. And I feel terrible because there's a part of me that says it was just coincidence. But then there's also a small part of me, the believer in me, that says, you asked it to go back to its source, and it kind of did. I don't know if that was the right or the wrong thing to do, because from what my understanding is, when you're trying to get rid of something, you have to make peace with it. You don't just make it attach somewhere else. That's terrible. So I kind of regret that, but I have not felt anything negative since then. Since then, I've only felt surrounded by positivity for the very most part, and anything paranormal that I've experienced, and I've only experienced very small things here or there, like the pull of a guitar string, things like that. Nothing has felt evil. And I don't use the word evil very often, but that chapter of my life, that felt evil. I learned from that experience is that energy is very real, energy is very tangible. I mean, we can kind of feel it just when someone we share our house with is having a bad day. And we feel it when we're around people who we constantly feel uplifted by. So it only makes sense that when we give out energy, it attaches onto things or it affects things. And where we send energy does have an impact. And it's made me a lot more mindful about how I am around other people and how I want to project what is inside of me to the rest of the world. And I try and stay really positive. I try to stay uplifting for people because what I experienced in that house, I never want to experience again or send to anyone. And as much as hauntings and Ouija boards and the occult and the paranormal can be really alluring and really interesting, it's not something that I want to ever dabble with because that was terrifying. I truly thought that if I ever encountered anything paranormal, I would, scientifically speaking, be like, wow, this is super cool. That was not cool. I never want to experience that again. I feel that one of the greatest assets I have to protecting my energy now is my dog. I have this incredibly intuitive dog. He is a big, fluffy black Eurasia. I call him Kiba, but his registered name is Grim because he reminds me a lot of the legends of the black dogs of the British Isles, also known as Grims. But he is one of my greatest daily rituals because if I'm having a bad day and might potentially be susceptible to negative energies, he comes over, he gets me moving, happy outside of the house, and when I come back it's like I'm a whole new person. So he came into my life and became just my everyday companion. I was writing a book called Animal Kind, which I nearly didn't finish because I felt so much imposter syndrome, and really him keeping me grounded every day was the reason I was able to finish this book. And then, of course, my former partner and I split. It was a very, very painful, very tumultuous split, and I don't know where I would be right now if I didn't have this amazing, gorgeous puppy who just turned a year old a couple of weeks ago, getting me up every morning and being like, hey, it's a great day to go for a walk. It's a great day to put food in my bowl. Like, let's make the most of it. And he is just the most wonderful creature. I feel so blessed to have waited this long in my life and have arrived at the place where I've got the perfect dog for me.
Em's book, Animal Kind, is available now. It brought me to tears, and I can't recommend it enough.